everybody, and welcome back to City Chats with Joyce. I am Joyce Dooley, the Director of Research and Innovation for Zpryme. I am incredibly excited today because we get to talk to the one and only Sherry Kish. She is the Emerging Mobility Advisor for HNTB. She and I met at a Texas Innovation Alliance Smart Mobility Transportation Innovation Summit a couple months ago. And I was fascinated with the background that she had done. And she had spoken on this really cool EV infrastructure panel with another colleague of ours, Drew Higgins. And anyways, I thought there was so much great content that we could discuss. I was really curious to know more about her experience with smart cities and what her perspectives are. And with that, I will just welcome Sherry. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it is fantastic to have you. And so, one of the things that I always like to ask at the beginning of these interviews is just, what makes you so passionate about smart cities and why do you do the work that you do?
Yeah, it's a great question to get us started. I mean, smart city efforts, they can change lives, especially in the world that I'm in transportation. When we started working with the city of Columbus on a smart cities challenge called Smart Columbus, it was a federal grant that brought a lot of smart city technology to the city. They were doing some research and realized that a major local job hub that was looking for workers required 1.5 hours of bus rides with transfers each way. That is how smart city technology can change. They can change making commutes more efficient. They can offer more mobility options at different price points to get people to jobs like that or to even healthcare. They can offer mobility options that reduce emissions, especially in areas with high rates of asthma. They can make mobility easier for those differently abled, anywhere from advanced mobile apps to complete streets with a Vision Zero focus. What we noticed in some of the projects for Smart Columbus is it gave a lot of the participants an independence that hadn't had that in the past. And that's what smart city efforts can do. They can really change the lives for people. And smart cities, those efforts don't just mean big purchase of technology. It can just be rethinking what you already have. What infrastructure do you already have there in your cities and neighborhoods that can be looked at from a different angle, from a different perspective? Can you partner with a neighboring jurisdiction to bring down the cost or collect more data for better planning? All of those what seem like menial efforts maybe in a conference room really can change the lives for people in really big ways.
That is fantastic. And I don't know that I could have said any of that better than what you just said, because it's, so true how these technologies can bring people together in ways that we never thought of before, and the impacts that can last generations, right? Like, it's not only can you necessarily sometimes see an immediate impact, but that moving forward things are just going to continuously compound and improve, as especially addressing like mobility, right? So one of the things that you had kind of mentioned, which I think we're going to dig into a little bit more with this next question, what was the most impactful project that you worked on?
So again, from that Smart Columbus world, we were able to work on something called prenatal trip assistance. And this brought almost 150 pregnant people who were on Medicaid. They participated in a pilot project to make non-emergency medical transportation in an on-demand format. So in the normal world, Medicaid insurance providers would offer these non-emergency trips to their pregnant members to go to the doctor, to go to the dentist, to go to the eye doctor, but the member would have to call into a call center to get approval for the ride 48 hours in advance. They could only call Monday through Friday during work hours. They would be given a 2-hour window that they might be picked up in, say 8 to 10 a.m. But when the driver got there without any notice between 8 and 10 a.m. when they got there, maybe a honk when they got there, they would have a 5-minute wait time to make it out to the driver. So for anyone who's listening who has kids, if they had another child that they had to get packed up, or even just being pregnant sometimes, being able to get your stuff together and out the door might take more than that 5 minutes. And so it was really frustrating, a lot of the women. And then after they would have their medical appointment, they would have to call again to schedule another pickup. And it could take up to 2 hours before that person would come to get them. So imagine sitting again in your doctor's office chairs. They're nice and comfortable, but they're not that comfortable, or waiting outside for that ride to show up. And so some of the members that we surveyed before this project started said that transportation was a reason that stopped them from even trying to go to all of their prenatal appointments. And so we said, that's not working, right? So what happened is the pilot gave half of the participants a mobile app and a call-in number for those who did not have a phone that had app capability, but they were allowed to book their ride on demand, just like we would be able to on Uber or Lyft. So this again gave them the freedom of being able to call for a ride when they were ready, when they needed it that day. They had access to vehicle, driver, license information, and they could see the car en route to them, which they could not do before. So the safety factor went up tremendously. Things that a lot of us are used to when we travel, when we have an Uber or Lyft style service, where we're able to get that information immediately, and we take it for granted. But in these situations, these participants didn't have that. And so then after the appointment, they could open up their app, do the same thing, click on it, and again, get that ride in probably a 5 to 10 minute time period versus 2 hours. So we found that it saved time on their, when you're pregnant, time is important. You might need to nap, or get those extra snacks in, but also frustration. And it created that safer transportation system and environment for them. And so we were really excited about that project. So I know I tell everyone about it. So thanks for listening twice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's such a fascinating project to work on, and especially too because, like, it's the difference between availability and accessibility, right? And like whether or not something is being offered, but whether it's feasible and achievable for people to actually incorporate into their lives. What's the point of technology if you can't actually use it? Or what's the point of services that you can't actually take benefits from? And especially too talking about like really critical stuff, helping pregnant mothers get to their natal appointments would, prenatal appointments, incredibly important for everybody involved, right? There's safety issues associated with that. And so really cool project. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. The next question I have for you, as an organization that partners with cities or city organizations that pursue grant funding for smart city initiatives and implementations and such, what are some of the best practices that you can share from your experience, for others that might be curious on how to go about getting these things off the ground?
Yes, I would give a shout out to Katie Zender, one of my coworkers. She always calls it the co-creation approach, that you really need to talk to the people in your village, in your jurisdiction, right? The residents, the tourists, the business leaders, the nonprofit leader, the professors. What problems are you truly trying to solve? If you take this co-creation approach with the community and the stakeholders in your area, sometimes the people closest to the problem are often closest to the solution. So what's going on in your area, and do you really have the pulse of all the people involved? So that's number one. Number two would be prepared for the funding opportunities. Well, I said that, smart city changes don't always require a lot of money. Sometimes they do. So when they do require that money and funding opportunities are out there, really having an understanding again of that village, your people that you can count on, knowing what your problem is and some potential solutions, you can be more ready for funding opportunities. You don't need to wait to be reactive. You can look at past funding opportunities, see who was successful, see why they were successful, reach out to them, understand how their project's going, and if they like, maybe who's even giving that grant or that loan out. You really also want to be looking for data. What data helps you tell your story? If you can get your problem, your partners, and your story down, you're really going to be ready when a funding opportunity comes out. And then you're just focused on tweaking it versus starting from scratch. The last thing I would say in this piece is something that we would do when I worked at the City of Columbus in the technology department is really reach out to technology companies, smart city companies, anybody in this space. Find out what's on their roadmap, what's coming up over the next 5 years that could be helpful. Technology is changing at a rapid pace. I don't think there's anybody who would disagree with that. And these companies are willing to share with you what's coming up in the future with them. It may require that you sign an NDA or some other document saying that you won't share their information. But being able to have that information into the future allows especially governments to have a better read on maybe where their money's going to go or better planning. One example I have of that, and maybe of government department sections working together was at the city within the technology team and then the public service team. So public service was really interested in figuring out a way to get all of their traffic signals connected by fiber. The city technology team was focused on having a fiber asset so that they could connect all of the department information and be able to push all that information through fiber to have a stronger system. So they started sitting down and planning and saying, hey, public service, when you're about to rip up a roadway or a sidewalk and do something, technology is going to step in and see if it makes sense to add empty conduit or conduit that has dark fiber in it that can be lit up later. And so this was that eye towards the future. Sometimes they put the conduit in and it would stay empty for a long time. I'm sure there's still a little bit out there that's still empty, but they were working together. They both identified a goal and a problem that they needed to focus on, work together, and still had to constantly work together. Every time they were about to rip up a road, it had to be another conversation. But it was a great opportunity to take advantage and dig once and not have to dig again. So
No, that's huge for so many reasons. That kind of collaboration is incredible. And you've given us several nuggets to pull from that question. So thank for that response. So thank you. Um, your roles have shifted over the years. So how do you stay currently active in your role at HNTB?
yes. So as you know, but the audience doesn't know, I'm a licensed attorney in Ohio who thought I would be working in law firms forever, and then ended up at the city of Columbus after a fortuitous meeting with an awesome attorney when I was in law school who introduced me to city government and what a role I could have in a small part, of changing people's lives by working on city projects. So I was able to work in the mayor's office as a deputy chief of staff and then help out over in the Department of Technology as a deputy director before I moved to HNTB to work on the Smart City Challenge grant for the city. So I started off at HNTB with Smart City Technology, where I learned a lot about data management and data privacy, and was able to pull in a lot of the city level policy information that I knew to help as the city was still trying to focus on what do we do with all this technology? How do we make it really work for the city residents and visitors? Mandy Bishop, who was running that program, said, this isn't technology for technology's sake. How do we make sure that it truly is a benefit to the people who are here? We're not here just to have new fun, apps and toys and things like that. So I really got to understand how can we take that data that we have access to and do something with it. But at the same time, how do we make sure anybody that's using it is truly protected? So it was a great entry into smart city technology and understanding it. And then HNTB gives me the cool job of helping and learning about advanced air mobility, which is awesome because that's, thinking about large drones carrying packages and delivering those, as well as in the future, I guess it's more commonly referred to as an air taxi type situation. And then they let me work on connected vehicle standard efforts. And these are at the state level with organizations like Drive Ohio, which is the technology arm of the Ohio Department of Transportation, or other state DOTs. But in all of these, my legal background really keeps me grounded in policy and data. But I'm super excited that I get to learn so much about all these other technologies. And then, as you know from us meeting recently, I have, and as you stated, really added the fun addition of electrification at the state level to my list of projects to work on. And that's with the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure funding that's come out with from the federal government. And most of my role has been working with the state level, but most recently I've been working with a local city here in Ohio on creating their electrification plan. And it's just such a huge undertaking, from the electric infrastructure, just from thinking about the electricity itself, the EV charging, and then you've got car manufacturing with the production changes, and then all the batteries that are out there competing to offer their longer performance. And then you add in all the federal funding, which is great, but it's been overwhelming and exciting to watch it play out and to really see the blend between the private and the public sector figuring this out together, to really build out that national network and the capabilities necessary to move electrification forward. It's it's just been really exciting to see it, and such an eye-opening experience, especially when you get to go to a ride and drive event and sit in vehicles that are beyond a couple years of my paycheck. So it's been really fun.
I understand completely what you mean on that last front for sure, but also too, just like, I don't have a legal background. I have a background in English, but like being able to uh learn so much about so many different kinds of aspects of smart cities implementation and projects. Like you just get my brain tingling, Sherry, when you talk about all these cool things that you're working on, and they're going to be so relevant. I mean, it's
Mhm.
not to put the cart before the horse in a lot of ways, but like when these things really come about, they're going to be life changing for so many
Mhm.
people and communities. And so it's just fascinating to be able to like look at it from that perspective. And I think that you're in a really great position to keep like constantly learning and reinventing yourself as you help reinvent cities, which I think is just so neat. And thank you for sharing all of that. So, we started talking a little bit about, or you started talking a little bit about the electrification and how that's going to play a role in smart cities. But looking at it from a vehicle to grid, vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to everything, EV perspective, like what's the real impact here that you're talking about?
Well, we can think about electric vehicles as giant computers, right? And they're collecting and harnessing so much data, and they're capable of talking to infrastructure on the side of the road. And they're capable of sharing that data just by connecting to a charger or, even cellularly. So we have this huge opportunity to harness that data and help with planning in the future. If you think about it from a city government perspective, a county government, we're working with one county to do a fleet conversion into electric vehicles, to be able to capture all that data and really think about it, not just, okay, fleet, yes, it's great, you are, being more efficient, but they can share the data that's being collected with the connectedness and all the other information coming out of it with their planning team to help look at future streets, as they're figuring out where they're going in the future. And the other thing is that, like, smart city projects like smart street lighting or mobility hubs, they also offer this interplay with electric charging. So if you have smart street lighting, you could go ahead and, because of all the power that's going to be going to that, to be able to make that street light smart and offer the other services it can offer, you can have electric vehicle charging coming off that smart street lighting. So now you have a smart city technology that can be brought into the electrification piece. Or a lot of communities are creating mobility hubs. Well, a lot of them are focused on bringing scooters and bikes and bus. Well, what if we also offered EV charging at a park and ride? And then what about for those scooters and the e-bikes? We don't have people coming to pick them up and going and charging them overnight. What if we had a very low level 1 charger built into that so that they can go ahead and plug in right there? So again, bringing these smart city projects and saying, hey, electrification is here. So let's make the best of it, and let's figure out how to make sure we're integrating it at all levels. And smart cities are clean cities, right? So electrification offers some, check marks in that category. It offers emission reduction and decarbonization benefits that really help their cities and meet their environmental goals. So again, it just plays right into it so nicely. And then, of course, as I got a little excited about advanced air mobility, it's coming, right? Joby Aviation just announced here in Ohio that they're building a manufacturing facility down in Dayton, Ohio. It's super exciting for Ohio to keep up in that race against North Carolina with any sort of, you know, flight in competition. So, but
Yeah.
it's another mobility option. It's really probably going to be for products first, then people. But again, most of that equipment is going to be fully electric. So they really need to be built. Electrification has to be built into the smart city ecosystem with the future. And we know, obviously, that the electric companies, they're trying to figure it out. The grid, we've got to figure out what's going on there. There's a lot of funding that's behind it. And I haven't met an electric utility that hasn't been ready to take it face on and say, hey, let's figure out how to make this work. So I think they're hand in hand, right? It has to be part of it.
They do have to be part of it. And I mean, it is just such a thrilling time. Having done smart cities for about 8 years now and having worked in energy for about three. The blend of the two coming together is so fantastic because there's just opening up more possibility for collaboration as well as for actual advancements in these things that we've been talking around for quite some time. So I think it's so cool that you get to be in the midst of it all, helping to make it happen for the people in Ohio. So I have one more question for you, right? We are now in October, if you can believe it, which is crazy. And so as the end of the year approaches, what are you most excited about?
Besides the holidays and seeing family, that's number one.
Yeah.
It would really be the transformational smart city work that's going to be announced across the country. As you and I met, and you mentioned at the Texas Innovation Alliance meeting this year, Austin and these other cities are getting together and they're doing the co-creation, right? They're doing the great collaborative approach to work together through these smart city challenges. And they're having these conferences to learn what problems are out there, what is everyone facing, hear the pitches on their grant requests, offering great networking so they can truly work together and rise all of the boats together, which is awesome. You've got San Bernardino County in California. They're working on a smart county master plan. They're the largest county in the US. And what's interesting about their county is that they have city locations, desert locations, and mountain regions. So they've got everything in one county. And as they're looking at the smart county master plan, they've got to take all that into consideration. You've got Denver, who just kicked off a smart city plan, and they're working on that, and they're super excited to get going. North Carolina DOT is working on a transformative advanced transportation mobility effort to understand and coordinate initiatives between all of their transportation sectors, current and future. We, brought up advanced air mobility a couple of times. I mean, that's a reality for states. The state of Ohio, through Drive Ohio, I think it was maybe been now a year and a half now ago, maybe 2 years now, they had the first state framework on advanced air mobility. So states are really moving forward and saying, hey, how do we connect all of the dots in smart city and transportation and electrification? The city of Dublin here, I briefly mentioned them earlier. They're here, they're a huge suburb outside of Columbus. And they have always been forward looking in environmental features, making sure that their residents are proud of where they lived. And they're really focused on making their city ready for electrification. They're working on an electrification plan, to ensure that they can meet the needs of their residents and visitors, not just for now, not just to keep up, but they're really saying, okay, what's coming for 2030? What's coming in the future? What do we need to know? Who do we need to have at the table with us to understand? And so I'm so excited about all of the news that's going to be coming out from all of these great agencies and many more. But one of the coolest things that I continue to be in awe of, and I'm sure we're going to see it with a lot of these plans and where they go, is that it's taking that village to make it happen. And I was mentioning you need to know your village up front earlier, and it really is that a lot of transportation projects or maybe electrification projects have been very traditional engineering or planning. But in these cases, we're seeing the technology teams at the table, the procurement teams at the table, because some of this, nonprofit organizations going after grants, governments going after grants, or even governments trying to get a charger installed. These were very different contracts. Environmental and alternative energy specialists have been at the table. We've had some specialized project managers, lawyers like me. And then again, around EV charging, electrical engineers, right? Bringing them to the table to make sure all of these people in the village are helping work through the right opportunities and solutions to really make sure that everything is coming together. And I'll steal a line from my old boss, Mayor Coleman, to make sure it's the best place to live, work, and raise a family, right? We're really focused on this smart city effort, again, to make a difference in people's lives. And it does take this entire village. So I'm excited to see how all of the villages across the country and all of these great places that are coming up with smart city plans are going to move us forward in the US.
That is definitely something to be excited about. And I have spent a little bit of time in Ohio, and I think it's a lovely state, and there's tons of amazing people working on very cool projects. And so, it's just it's very invigorating to talk to you about it, and it's very hopeful as and inspiring as well to think about how we're getting there. Like, it's coming and we're getting there. So thank you so much for your time today, Sherry. It was great talking to you. For everyone else, please stay tuned for the next episode of City Chats with Joyce coming up here in a few weeks. And with that, have a great day.
Thanks, Joyce.